Hey, this is Brad Dyke saying hi, and this is the video number 2 for Fix It First Before You Go and Buy Do-It-Yourself video. So, in my IT videos, I do a lot of what we call recursive work. And this recursive work is where I find old gear, old things, right? And I turn them around. I fix them. Something that didn't work, it had a broken satchel. Well, I can buy the satchel piece, take this guy off, put a new one on, and voila! I've got myself a $200 Dremel tool that cost me $5. But let's just say you did pay $200 for this. And as you look at it, you're thinking, I can't take this apart. Wrong. That is not correct. Yes, you can. Many industries do whatever they can to make you feel like you can't do anything but go out and buy another one. So what do I mean by that? As I drop it, I was picking it up and said, "Urgh, it wasn't working right." And I was like, all right, now go ahead and drop it. So what am I talking about? Well, today's world, companies are doing everything they can to make you go buy another one of their products. What do they mean? Well, they're selling you a product, right? Yeah, you're going to buy a product. But it's kind of got a little bit of planned obsolescence in it. And let's say, for instance, a remote. It has what's called a glue seal on it. Which means if this very poorly designed surface gets struck at about 50 times or more, it starts to fail. In other words, it starts to collapse. It was done on purpose. They want you to buy another one because to them it took them 5 to 10 cents to make this. You spent $15 to buy it. Wrong. This has what we call a glue seal. And if you look at it, it's a snap glue seal. It's right there. It's a seam. Okay? Many remotes do this. What they don't tell you is that this actually cracks open pretty easily. You can do it 2 ways. One, you can use my trusty Dremel tool with that very thin cutting blade to remove the glue or the seal. Or you can use what's called a pry knife, which is kind of looks like something like this, an X-Acto knife kind of device. And you go up and you shimmy through the glue line. Let's see here. Yeah, you shimmy through the glue line and you release the seal. Now, you can always put the glue right back on once you fix it. And you can open this up and you can look at the parts, fix it, put it back together. Now, this is a poor example because, yeah, it took 5 or 10 cents to make this little very piss poor remote, which is an LED remote, by the way. And they're all made the same way. But there are things that absolutely you technically can't fix. USB cables. USB cables are a perfect example of failure. And when the USB industry got their standard in place, they made everybody buy their USB port. And we all know what that port looks like, right? It looks like this, right? An A or a B typical USB port. Well, as everybody established buying all their stuff, the industry kind of zeroed out. So they said, oh, well, we're going to make USB next. Now, granted, they improved the materials of the original cabling by using higher quality cables and higher quality build-outs inside. It's a labor change and material change. It's still a USB cable. So technically speaking, this is piss poor copper, and not even that, probably aluminum. Well, this is probably closer to something like silver coat or something like that. And, they do kind of manipulate a little bit, but you have to understand the whole reason why this is happening is because they're driving their markets. They're selling stuff and trying to reestablish over and over and over and over the new next whatever you have to buy to use the next latest gadget. Can't use a higher quality A class B cable anymore. Yes, you can, but they don't want you to. They want you to buy their stuff. How can you avoid this? Well, you can actually buy USB cables, heads, and just the cable sets. And you can use a soldering iron to repair these heads. It can be done. And you just use glue. Once you heat gun this off, you just use an acrylic or silicone glue lining in a small little tape mold, and you put it right back, and it's fixed. Now granted, we're talking about small items here, but when you've got all your data on a USB stick, and these are really seriously designed to fail, so don't use these for permanent storage. Use them for temporary. These break really easy, especially in the mid-axis area here, but you can repair them effectively with a fine point soldering iron, which is a little bit finer than this one. And you can re-glue those contacts, get your data off. Don't be afraid to fix it. That's my driving force here, is everything has about an 85-90% chance of fixing it. Another example, air conditioning filters. Don't buy the throwaways. Use one-time buy static resistant air filtration filters. You only have to buy them once. These come apart on the corners. You can actually make these from just the rods, as in a separate buy, and a big sheet of this aluminum contact sense and the interfeed plastic membrane, and you just cut them to size. And every HVAC environment you have is absolutely easily addressable. The industries are so geared to make you not to fix it yourself, but to promote services, professional services, and so on, to go in and do it for you so that they can perpetuate their payment cycles. Now, this can go all the way up to, let's say, HVAC, okay? Do-it-yourself HVAC work. There is very easy work that you can do with HVACs that don't require a lot of equipment. And there are some things I tell you professionally and personally, don't try to do this on your own because it can be dangerous. So for instance, when dealing with air conditioning systems, the testing process is really easy. If you have what we call an ohms meter, which is a very common thing you can pick up at Harbor Freight for $15-20, you can check basic things on your outside coil charger. In other words, the fan unit out in your yard, and you can test that, both the amperage of the motor and how much it's drawing, and how much these capacitors are processing. If you look at the capacitor inside your coil unit, you will see it will have some information. Take that information, go out on the web, find out what's the normal draw for it, and then put your ohms meter on it and see if the draw is there. Ladies and gentlemen, that $300 or $400 HVAC visit to fix your outdoor fan unit costs $15. I kid you not. So $15 for the ohms meter, which you can use for anything in your house. It's electrical. That's definitely a long-term tool to have, and a simple capacitor. Matter of fact, I buy a capacitor every time I get a new fan unit, just so that I have a backup there, and I put it on the inside case housing. And if I have to have somebody come in and do it for me, they are surprised to see, oh, well, you were already ready for me. It's a $80 charge. Heck of a lot better than them ordering it for $100 and just, anyways, I digress. The point is that you can do a lot of that work yourself on your HVAC unit, on the exterior fan unit that's outside your house. For instance, this is a great example. You can use what is called a foamer, which is you can get at Harbor Freight for like $5. It's basically a squirt gun that goes on a hose, but it creates a lot of foam. And you take Dawn dish soap and you spray the inside of your HVAC fan unit so that the cooling coils, that's the metal mesh on the outside, when there's a fan in the middle, and what happens basically is the fan pulls the air through that metal mesh to run your AC. Well, bugs and air and dirt and all types of things accumulate inside that coil, and it's not as efficient as it used to be. So just by spraying that foam inside the unit, avoid the motor, avoid the electronics that is secured on the side, but you can spray down those coil changes and then just take your hose and rinse it out and let it dry and turn your air conditioning on. You've just saved yourself a lot of heartache. Do it every couple of years, you're in great shape. Another example of do-it-yourself is really stupidly simple, but no one tells you to do this anymore, and it really is very frustrating to me. Your hot water heater. Everyone is counting on you. That's Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, all the manufacturers of hot water makers and all of that. They are all counting on you not reading your manual and not doing the most basic, simple thing with your hot water heater tank. And that is draining it. Yeah. You see, what they want you to have happen to your tank is this. I don't ever admit to this, but it's true. They want sediment. You see, water carries sediment, but the electrolysis process and the heating processes and the chemical interactions, including the copper pipes that the water transfers through, all create a situation inside the tank. And we call it sediment buildup. Now, you really can't get rid of all of it, but you can definitely make it get out of your tank more often than not. So if you've ever noticed on your hot water tank, you have this valve up high. It's called a pressure valve. It's designed to blow if the pressure inside the tank is lost or out of control. There's another open valve down on the bottom that you use a screwdriver with, and you open that guy up with a hose attached to it that goes to your local drain. Now, you should have a drain in your basement or somewhere near your hot water heater. If not, then move it to your sink. And what you're doing, I use a clear plastic tube when I do this. What you're doing basically is you're pulling the water from the bottom, not from the top. And by doing that, you're pulling the sediment down and you're draining a good piece of that sediment out through that hose. Now, remember what I said? I used a clear hose. I did that for a reason, because I want to see the sediment, and it comes out rusty, white and rust, and even what looks like even kind of foamy. And it's not foam, it's calcite, basically calcium, that's accumulated with other mush inside your hot water tank that inevitably goes out to your faucets. So if you drain your tank once a year, just basically turn it on about halfway open. That should be sufficient. You could go bigger if you've got, if you don't make a mess. It will just speed up the draining process, and you'll know that you've drained it all by the fact that you have nothing but cold water in your hot water line when you test your water line. But basically what you're doing is you're draining out all of that water downwards, not upwards. And by doing that, you're moving that sediment out and you're adding life to your hot water heater. See what I mean? Simple, stupid things that we just don't think about because nobody showed us or didn't take the time to read the manual, because that's just too much time, right? But if you want to save thousands of dollars, these do-it-yourselfers have basically one simple modus, or I guess you'd say the MOTA. What's my MOTA or MOTA? I can't remember. Anyways, the point is if you didn't try to fix it first, then you're just throwing it away. If you could have fixed it and not have to go out and buy a brand new whatever, then you're in the plus. Absolutely. You're smart about it, and we really have to start getting smart about this. In my opinion, the professional service industry is just gotten so lazy and so out of scope. They just charge whatever, and you're not going to fix it, so here's my price. And if they have special agreements with everyone else in the area, they're all kind of maintaining that high billing price, which is not right and it's not ethical, but it's happening. It's happening more often, and they're getting caught doing it. We call it price fixing. And there's more of it going on. For instance, you have industries out there, big companies buying up all the small-time little companies and buying good dollar value, but they put NDA agreements in there saying that you can't work for at least 5 years on anything related to this, so that we can control your market. And then they come in and they double the price. Yep. And it's happening all over the place. As a matter of fact, you should start to see commercials from locally owned businesses saying, hey, we don't believe in that. And that's my guy. I like the person who lives in my community, that his money stays within our community, and I'm getting a fair price. It's more fair, unlike the other side of the fence where it's not so much. But with that being said, this is my second video of an overscope of ideas of how you can save money. Very simple things. Starting next, I'll go into very specific details. I'll start by first applying some of the basic rules of very easy things that can save you $40, $50 by item. Then move up to items that could cost you $300 or $400 an item. Yep, I'm holding it right here. $15 capacitor. Sad. And keep going up into like washers and dryers and other things like that. I hope these will be helpful for you. And I'll also give you some suggestions on books that I think are really great books. It's all about back to the basics. We're getting too dependent and losing our independence. And this is a way for me to help you get that back, so you have some measure of control. Because you can fix things on your own. You can build things. It's kind of fun. It's enjoyable. Don't be afraid of this. Don't be afraid to fix anything. If it's a blender or a clock or something, at least open it up and try to fix it. But do your research first. Do some collective video research. Try to get exactly to the make and model of whatever you're working with. I'll bet you $10 somebody out there has gotten frustrated just as much as you are, and they've done it just as easy, just as well. So with that being said, this is Brad Dyke. God bless and have a great week. Take care.